So welcome to Powerless Penguins United Big Book Study. This week I'm pleased to reintroduce Mags D, who's come along to continue with our Big Book Study. Over to you, Mags.
Thank you for your service and to everybody else that's doing service this morning. It's a pleasure to be here, as always. It's been a busy morning already. I'm glad to sit down for the rest. So we are in step 9. And where we're heading out on this little road to make our amends. Step 9 on page 59, you'll always know that I refer to the short form of the steps, and they're set out on page 59. And it simply says, made direct amends to such people, i.e. those that we have harmed. So we make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. That's it in the short form. Most people just read it in that part of the book, or when they hear chapter 5, how it works, read out, or well, a part of it, the first 2.5 pages. Or they read it in a short form on the scrolls on the wall as they're presented in the rooms, or when somebody reads out the 12 steps. And they may not get to step 9 in the long form, which starts on page 76 and works right the way through to page 85. So it's a significant chunk of the book. It's a significant chunk of a book study if you're doing that. And within those pages from 76 to 85, they set out some amazing general principles to guide us through any amends. They list, I think it's about 9 different categories, whether that be business acquaintances or friends, if you've committed a crime, if you owe money, if you've been involved with other people in a relationship and you shouldn't have been. It goes through various different amends. You may not have encountered any of those scenarios. You may have encountered some of those scenarios that are set out in the book, but it doesn't matter either way, because the general principles that are set out within those pages give you the guide rails, whatever word you want to use, to apply these principles in any respect to any amends that you're going to go out and make. If you haven't got to this point with your sponsor, or you haven't got a sponsor, get one, because you need one and you can't do it without a sponsor. And if you haven't got that message already, then I don't know what else to say, because this meeting and many others talks about the importance of sponsorship, having that person armed with the facts about themselves who can take you through this program, armed with themselves about how they overcome the alcohol, drugs, whatever it was, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps. They're here to take you by the hand and give what was given to them. It's so incredibly important, especially at this stage, that you have a sponsor who you can discuss these amends with before you go out on this road of discovery, because that's what it was for me. I discovered a lot about myself in this amends process. But I want to just caveat this whilst I'm going through this step 9 process. There might be a lot of things that I say within this that are my own words, because I'm talking to you about my own experience in my life, my own bitter experience in my life. In order to, I suppose, bring alive how the clear-cut mastery directions enabled me to participate in this amends process, to own this amends process, and to do and take the action that I needed to do. And to, I suppose, demonstrate that as I go through, or as I went through this amends process, this is for me where things started to change again in relation to the principles that have been set out in the book all the way up to this point. Things like at the top of page 20 started to fall into place for me. My very life as an ex-problem drinker depends upon my constant thought of others. I learned that in step 1, but it came alive as I was sitting making these amends to people. My very life depends upon my constant thought of others, not about myself anymore. We know that time and time and time and time again in the book it talks about us becoming useful. These amends are where I become useful to that other person. These amends are where I truly set aside every single thing I think I know to have this new experience with God. Because these conversations are not about me. In the respect that this is not about the outcome that I want to manipulate, maneuver, and get what I want. I'm placing myself in a position, having had that experience with my 7-step prayer, where I was willing and ready for immediate use to go out from my step 7, having completed that, to do his bidding, to do the bidding, to do the work of the God of my own understanding. I often say to people, and this might sound really bizarre, my life is not my own. In making the decision in step 3, I made that decision to turn my will and my life over to the power greater than myself. So my life is about placing myself to be of maximum service to God and to those about me. And that's what we talked about last week at the top of page 77. At this point, our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people around us. It's not about me now getting you to fit to what I need you to be in my life. And that change in my perception, that change in my thought process, that change in how my brain is wired is a total and utter miracle of healing. So, I don't know, I'm sharing all of that with you because this process, this part of the process, enables me to grow towards having a more open mind about things and to go into things without expecting anything. Because remember, we talked about last week, what my position is now is to take the spiritual action irrespective of what the outcome is. All I have to do is keep showing up and making these amends. And I was thinking about it this morning before I was, I was thinking about this morning whilst I was pottering about doing what I needed to do. And thinking about the fact that, in all of this, what is that spiritual action? People might not understand what the spiritual action is because I didn't in the first instance. The spiritual action is showing up. The spiritual action is taking action. The spiritual action is doing what it says in here. The spiritual action is the discipline. The discipline of knowing this is what needs to be done in order for me to get to the next step. I can't skip over this and then go into 10, 11 and 12. Like it says in step 5, if we skip this vital step, if you skip over step 5, that vital life-giving step, and go into 6, 7 and the rest of the steps, that's not going to be of any service to you or anybody else around you. And I certainly can't, hop, skip and jump over these amends, feeling that I'm the great I am of myself, happy days. I've got to this point. I've made a couple of amends and the rest of them can wait. That's not what this is about. We have to take the action. And it's not a tick box exercise. We have a list. We made the list in step 8. Remember last week we talked about all of those ceremonies and burning that list, and that we should not burn that list because we need it for our step 9 to keep us on track. It's not a tick box exercise. We're going to this in, like we talked about last week, a sincere desire to right the wrong. Sincere. To right the wrong. To make the change. And we're not doing this by ourselves any longer. We've got a power that is running in and through us. We're not going into these conversations by ourselves. We've got a new power, a new direction, a new strength. This is where the rubber meets the road, definitely. But with my sponsor, although it's not a tick box exercise, he gave me 5 to do every week. He didn't choose the ones that I did, but 5 amends needed to be made every week in order for me to continue to make the progress every week. That was my target. Because he knew what I was like. If he didn't set that as a target, and that might seem very tick box exercise, but it wasn't. It was about the discipline. Because 5 a week isn't a big deal in the grand scheme of all of the hours in the week that I have. I'm going out to be of service. And I might not have achieved 5 a week, but did I endeavour to try to get to that point? Yes, I did. And anytime I phoned my sponsor and I had a problem about anything at this point in the process, oh, you know what, my sister's such and such, and this is happening with the neighbour next door, he wouldn't answer me. He'd just say to me, how many amends have you made this week? And then we'd stop the conversation. He was getting me to become disciplined because I had never been disciplined in my life up to this point. So there was another lesson that came from this that I never knew would be the case. Last week we ended on page 77, like Laws said at the top of the hour. We're starting on that paragraph where we don't use this as an excuse for shying away from the subject of God. We're moving into the paragraph about what we do with making amends to the man we hated. And I got a call from somebody during the week and they said, oh, looking forward to next week because you left us on a cliffhanger because you're going to talk about the man that you hated. That wasn't intentional. It's just the next paragraph. I didn't expect this to be that soap opera that does the boom, boom, boom at the end and leaves you hanging. I wasn't expecting to leave you hanging with a cliffhanger last week. But I am going to talk to you about the man that I hated. So apologies if you've got up at 7 o'clock this morning to get ready to come onto this meeting and expecting some real, soap opera version of my amends to the man that I hated. That's probably not what you're going to get. What I'm going to share with you is my bitter experience in a very general way about what happened with the man I thought I hated. So let's get into it. I'm just going to go with the flow on this. There's a lot to cover over the next number of weeks, but I'm just going to, as best I can, be really honest about my bitter experience with all of this and the beautiful experience that I've had with it and how I stayed to the clear-cut directions with regards to this and the importance of doing this with the sponsor. So what it's referring to in the fact that we don't use this as an excuse for shying away from the subject of God. If the person that we're sitting with making this direct amend, it's important. It's not a text message. It's not an Instagram message. We can use social media to find these people in order to make the direct amends. But I'm going out and I'm searching for these people. And the man that I hated, I had to search for because I had lost contact. Well, I hadn't lost contact. He cut contact. Let's be honest about that too. But we don't shy away from the subject of God. If it happens to come up in the conversation, then we talk about it quite naturally. But we're not on this point of shoving our spiritual reinvigoration down this person's throat. Quite naturally, if it arises, I will tell someone, well, you know what? Yeah, I'm on a part of a 12-step program, and part of that is that it's a spiritual program. It's a recovery program. There's action that I need to take. And, I've established this relationship with, power that's greater than me. I choose to call it God. And I'm very honest about it. And if it doesn't crop up, then it doesn't crop up. I don't lay it on thick with, you know what, I found God. I'm a changed person. You're not as good as me. I'm here to tell you the gospel according to, or whatever other, spiritual books you choose to use. There are many spiritual books. So when it will serve any good purpose, we're willing to announce our convictions with tact and common sense, just like I've described. I'm willing. I'm not opposed to in mind. If someone asks me the question about, well, tell me about this spiritual thing. Talk to me about this. I'll talk to them very openly about my challenges with it. I'll talk to them very openly about how the big book gave me access to it. I'll talk to them very openly that when I came into the rooms, I never thought that that's what we were going to be talking about. And that how my life has changed as a result of it. I'm not able to articulate it many times, but I give them, what my experience of the whole thing is. So here we go. This is another little category, if you like. At the beginning, we've talked about those friends and business acquaintances. Now we're talking about the question of how to approach the man we hated. And look at that word approach. We're making direct amends. We have to approach these individuals. We need to make the first contact. Whether that's, those people that are in our lives already, the family, the friends that are close by, that low-hanging fruit, as my sponsor would have called them. We go out and we speak with these people. We make the arrangements. With this particular person, I had to search. I had to reach out. I then had to make the approach. I wasn't willing in the beginning to approach this person because I was devastated about the effects that their actions had on me. It was a number of months before I reached out and made that approach. And it was a short period of time before they came back to me via social media to say that they were willing to sit with me. Now, what I would say is, as I talk through this, set aside every single thing you think you know in order for you to have a new experience with God. Because what tends to happen when we go into listening to people's amends process and they're giving you their experiences, automatic reaction is potentially opinion, judgment. Oh, I wouldn't have done that. Oh, I wouldn't have said that. Or why didn't you do that? Or if he had said that to me, well, then this is what I would have done. Well, you don't know. Because it's not your conversation. It wasn't your amends to make. And you weren't in the position of having this conversation. The important thing is that you listen with a willingness and honesty and an open mind for yourself. Because God knows what might help you in the future with the amends that you need to make. So it may be that he has done us more harm than we have done him. Yes, for sure. That's what I thought when I sat down in my 4th step to write down why I was angry at this person, the impact that it had on me, my personal relations, my sex relations, my pocketbook, my pride, what I thought he thought of me, my self-esteem, what I thought of myself. And then when I moved into that last column where I could see my selfishness, my dishonesty, my self-seeking, my fears in relation to what I had done to him, how I had treated him, what I had put him through in my addiction, even though at that point I hadn't admitted, even though at that point I had not let the idea in that I was powerless over alcohol physically and mentally, and that I had made my life unmanageable, and as a result of that had also made his life unmanageable. So when I sat down in front of him, I still was of the mindset that we'll rectify this situation and I'll get back what I need to get back. And very swiftly, when I started that conversation, it became very apparent that I was not going to get back what was taken from me. Now, in very general terms, this is about financial, this is about money. A significant amount of money was taken from me by this person. And when I say significant, I mean significant in my life. It's all relative. It doesn't matter the amount of money, but it was significant. It was my life savings. And I share that with you because the beauty of this program of action and the beauty of this program of recovery enabled me to sit with this gentleman and understand from his perspective over the course of the period of time that we were together in a relationship, how much harm I had caused him. It doesn't excuse what happened with the finances. But what this program and what the power has enabled me to do has enabled me to understand. And you might think that this is weird, warped, crazy, whatever, but you can think what you like because I don't care. What this power that I have in my life that gives me the strength and the direction to sit with this person, I have come to learn, thankfully, that money was never supposed to be mine. It was never supposed to be mine. And I can sit here today from the bottom of my heart knowing that to be true. And in that conversation, those finances were never mentioned. His wrongs were never mentioned. I talked about my selfishness. I talked about my self-seeking. I talked about my fear of him. I talked about how I could see how I manipulated him, how I used him, how I was trying to get what I wanted all the time. And at the same time, seeing how much he looked after me and how he tried to care for me and how he tried to protect me and how he knew I had an addiction, but he couldn't do anything about it. And in the end, he had no other option than to leave, like my family did too. They had no other option than to leave. And in actual fact, through this immense process, my thought process on that has changed because it wasn't that they had no other option to leave. In actual fact, they had no other option than to let me go. And there's a significant difference in that. They didn't abandon me. They didn't leave me to die. They simply had to let me go. In order for me to be sitting here today talking to you about this stuff, in order for me to be more useful, if you like, to more people and to them, they had to let me go. And when I sat in front of this gentle, kind, amazing individual, I could see fully the impact and the harm that I had caused to them. Full blown, I could see it. Will I ever get that money back? No, I won't. Because I can't afford to pursue it. Some people would think that that's a double-edged sword. Your money was taken and you can't afford to go get it. Some people will be sitting here thinking, well, what about this solicitor? Yeah, I went to see one. Can't get it back. Well, what about the police? Yeah, I went to see the police. I can't get the grace of God that was not supposed to be my importance of being independent. You know, the importance of trust, the importance of honesty, the importance of, like it says later on in the amends, standing on my own 2 feet, the importance of depending on this power, the importance of money was never going to make me happy. Money was never going to give me the peace of mind. And right now what I have is peace of mind that is so priceless. So priceless. You can't put a figure on it. So all of this external stuff that I used to be impacted by kind of takes on a different perspective. You know, my life now is so incredibly simple. And I don't want anybody to get the violins out and start playing the sad songs when I start to tell you this bit, you know. The money was never meant to be mine. Yes, I earned it. Yes, all of these things happened where I had the privilege of having this money, but then I don't, and therefore life changes. Life takes on new meaning. Life takes on a different perspective. I no longer own a car and I can't afford a car. I no longer own a house, but I can afford to pay my rent. I used to have all sorts of designer, this, that, and the other. No longer do I have that stuff. And that is a very incredible, beautiful, peaceful place to live. I don't need the car. I can get 2 buses to work and back. I don't need to own my own house because I've got a beautiful little rental property that is just adorable. This is where God would have me be for now. That's all that matters. You know, the opportunity to get 2 buses to work and back again, and the people that I speak to, the people that I interact with, a very beautiful thing. Standing at the bus stop in torrential rain and wind, hearing the rain on my hood. It's a very beautiful thing. It's so windy here in Ireland, I haven't even got an umbrella. There's no point. But, you know, this is the thing. The beauty of what we experience in a life when we start to see things differently. This was no longer about the man that I hated, because I didn't hate him. I loved him. I was with him for a long period of time. That love didn't change. Do I see it from a different angle? 100% I do. So it may have seemed that he had done me more harm. And though I had acquired a better attitude toward him, we're still not keen about admitting our faults. I found it difficult to make that approach. I found it difficult to become willing. But I did ultimately, because my sponsor kept on guiding me to get to the point where, nevertheless, with a person we dislike, we take the bit in our teeth. Because here's the thing. It is harder to go to an enemy than to a friend. The easier, softer route is to go with all of our friends, and deal with all of that. And yes, it's important. Go to your friends, do that, but don't ignore these individuals who you may seem to be your enemy, because you don't know what the outcome of the conversation is ultimately going to be. It's not your outcome. Your little plans and designs no longer matter, like it says in the third step promises on page 63. Your little plans and designs no longer matter. You're now in the role, the world to play the role that he assigns. And it tells us that, but we find it much more beneficial to us if we go to the person that is our enemy. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to him in a helpful. I'm going to this person to be helpful and bring this forgiving spirit. And I'm going to come back to that word forgiving in a minute. In a forgiving spirit, confessing our former ill feeling and expressing our regret. That's exactly what I did with this person. I'm also going to him with a sincere desire to right the wrong. When we're talking about that forgiving spirit, when I was approaching these amends and when I'm speaking with sponsees, often people think of forgiveness in the form of Christianity. That's not what we're talking about here. Set aside every single thing you think you know about forgiveness in relation to organized religion. It's not about me saying to this gentleman, I forgive you for everything that you've done. I ain't got the power to forgive somebody in the sense of the word that everybody understands it. I'm not going to him begging him for forgiveness and yes, bless you, my child, I forgive you. That's not what this conversation is about. I see this word forgive in a different way. I'm going in to have this conversation with this person and I'm going in to do this for God, to give it to God. That's the way that I look at this. Because these amends are no longer about me and the outcome that I need. I'm turning my will, and I have turned my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand him, as I've gone through that step 4 right the way through to step 7. I'm now going out to do his bidding. I'm doing this work for God to give the outcome to God. That's what this is about. I'm going to these individuals in a forgiving spirit to do it for God, to give it to God, because the outcome is God's. And I just keep on showing up, keep on showing up, keep on showing up. And when I give my information to this person and everything that I've discovered in my inventory and in my 5th step conversations, at the end of me giving the information to them, I'm asking them, is there anything else? Is there anything that I have missed? How does it make you feel? And how can I make amends? And I sit back and I listen to how everything I've said made them feel. I sit back and I listen to all of the stuff that I missed, left out, and they have remembered. And I listen, and I listen, and I listen. No comment. There was times I had to bite the inside of my cheek. I had to bite my lip. No comment. And how can I make amends? With the man that I hated, he was adamant, no contact. He was adamant, never again. Therefore, the money was never mentioned. Conversation ends, I move on. Conversation with my sponsor, how did it go? Not what I expected. Okay, on to the next. Isn't that amazing? That is a miracle, an absolute and utter miracle. I'm free from everything that we discussed, free from the bondage of myself, genuinely, free from the shackles of thinking that money is the thing in life that's going to make me happy and that possessions are going to make me happy. Free from all of those thoughts, genuinely. Because the reality of it is the power that is greater than me has provided more than I have ever needed all of my life. And even more so, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, I can see where he has provided me in abundance, 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 abundance. It's a miracle, and I love every single part of it. Think about that forgiving spirit. We're doing this as we move into the rest of these steps. We're being of service. We're doing this for God, to give this to God. Somehow or other, that just changed my perspective on life. You know, when you don't want to go somewhere, or you don't want to do something, or you feel that your life's an inconvenience, oh God, I have to go and I have to do this for my family this afternoon. Well, you know what? You're doing it for God, to give it to God, because the outcome is not yours. You've no idea what the outcome of this is. And here's the other part. With that man, I thought I hated having shared with him that I had gone into a 12-step recovery program a couple of years later. Not last year, the year before, actually. He reached out to me because there was a former work colleague who needed help. So he reached out to me. He's in another part of the world. This person is here in Belfast. I then reach out to the lady who got me into the fellowship, got me my first big book, and got me to my home group. And now this former colleague of ours is on a 12-step recovery program, doing what she needs to do. So if that's the outcome that God required from the immense conversation that we had, that's the power. That's the miracle of it. It was never to do with the conversation necessarily that I was having with him at that moment in time. You know, there is one, may you find him now. That's how much we're connected through all of this process. That's the importance of taking a spiritual action irrespective of the outcome, because you have no idea how deep the power runs through. So we move on then to some more little guides or tips as to how we should approach these conversations. Under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. No. I hardly opened my mouth after I made my amends. I listened to what I'd missed. Was there anything else? I listened to how it made him feel. I listened to the amends that he wished me to make. We simply tell him that we will never overcome our drinking until we have done our utmost to straighten out the past. We are there to sweep off our side of the street, realizing that nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until we do so. Never trying to tell him what he should do. His faults are not discussed. A clear-cut direction, masterly detail. We're not in those conversations saying, no. We are not there to make a comment. His faults are not discussed. We stick to our own. And if our manner is calm, frank, and open, we will be gratified with the result. And I was truly gratified with the result of my amends when I was calm, frank, and open to the discussion or to what these individuals had to say. It's so amazing that everything that we need to do and everything that we need to understand about how we approach these amends is set out in these few simple pages. Yet when we're in the rooms, we're sometimes putting the fear of God into people about this amends process, when in actual fact, it's a conversation, it's calm, it's open, it's frank. We're there to listen. We're there to place ourselves to be of maximum service to God. It's not about ourselves. I keep reiterating that over and over and over again. It's not what you think it is what I'm trying to say, I suppose. Because remember, at this point in your step 9, You're a very different person to the person that you were at step 1, 2, 3, and, right up to this point. You might be sitting in step 2 right now with your sponsor thinking, I ain't going to be able to do this. Well, you're not the same person that you are now as what you're going to be when you get to step 9. As you keep on turning the pages, as you keep showing up, this psychic change, this personality change will come over you if you do the work in the way that it is suggested. You're not the same person going into these conversations that you were when you set out on this journey. You're just not. And I'm most definitely not the same person who made this amends 6 years ago. Do you know what I mean? I'm not the same person. Because as we go through the remaining steps of 10, 11 and 12, we're constantly in this place of spiritual growth and understanding and becoming more and more awake to this spiritual experience that is our life. That's what this is all about. Moving on to the next little category. In 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. That was my experience. Totally and utterly unexpected happens. Some people might say, you know what? I understand. Yeah, I get it. The number of people that knew about my drinking that thought I didn't know about my drinking was phenomenal. Or some people that came to me and said, I've been waiting on this. And I'm thinking, well, I didn't even think I had an amends to make to you. And they give me all of this information. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't remember that happening. I didn't realize that I had that impact on you. I didn't realize it cost you that harm. The release that people get from telling us the harms, that's what it's about. Their release from this as well as us. So yeah, in 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected did happen for me. Sometimes the man we are calling upon admits his fault, so feuds of years standing melt away in an hour. Yes, I approached people and they said, you know what, we've got nothing to talk about because I really should have given you more help. I should have been there for you. Yet my anticipation was I was going to get my head cut off by these individuals because I've just been such a horrible person. What you see is the best of people, people's compassion, people's love, people's kindness, people's understanding. What this amends process does is keeps my mind blown open to the fact that, people care, people understand, they want to help. But it's me that had the closed mind. It's me that wasn't willing. It's me that hasn't been honest. And as I have more and more of these conversations, my mind gets blown open, my heart gets blown open because I'm sitting there wanting to understand with the grace of God how I can become more and more and more useful. Rarely do we fail to make satisfactory progress. The reality of it is every attempt made, every approach made, every conversation undertaken, you are making progress. You might not even know in any given moment in time what that progress is or what that progress is for or what the conversation was about or what did they mean by that? What did I didn't say this, I did say it. It doesn't matter. Take the action. Move on. Because as we go through the next number of weeks, you're going to start to see that you continue with this amends process as you then start on the journey of 10, 11 and 12 in your daily reprieve. So you're not doing step 9 in isolation. You're doing it parallel to the other steps that are coming up. So you've got a set of spiritual tools that guide you all the way through this process, as well as your relationship with your sponsor. You're always making progress. Remember, as it says on page 60, this is about spiritual progress, not perfection. Each amends that you make gets better and better and better and better because you're making progress every single time. You understand the format you have to use. The conversation begins to flow a little bit more naturally. You get a little bit more peace. You get a little bit more confidence. You get a little bit more reliance each time on the power of God, because each time you walk away from one conversation and into the next, you're thinking, God, that wasn't what I was expecting. You then start to realize that your expectations mean nothing. And that in and of itself is a release. Progress every single time. Our former enemies sometimes praise what we are doing and wish as well. The number of people that say, do you know what, it's great to see you keep on doing what you're doing. And then there's the other ones that will say, occasionally they will offer assistance. Can I help you out? Is there anything that you need? Genuinely, this is my experience of what happens through the amends process. But the reality of it is, it should not matter, however, if someone does throw you out of his office. It is not about the outcome. It doesn't matter. What you're doing is taking the action that you need to take to build a relationship with this power that is greater than you. You're going out to do his bidding. You're enabling God to shape and mold you, not you. You have to fit to be of maximum service to God, right? You're not getting God to fit to what you want anymore. Those days are gone, people. And I make no apology for that. Those days are gone. They're gone. It shouldn't matter if someone throws you out of his office. We've made our demonstration. We've done our part. It's water over the dam. I got out of rehab after 3.5 months. I got out on the Friday. On the Tuesday, I went to see my employer. The first ever time I told anybody in my life, the first time ever I was honest. I rocked up with my boss on the Tuesday and said, I've told you lies. I haven't been suffering from depression, stress and anxiety. My doctor's note stated that. You haven't had contact with me for the last 3.5 months. My sister is the person that's been dropping the doctor's notes into the office. I've been in a treatment facility for 3.5 months. I'm a full-blown alcoholic, and I had to be locked up in the treatment facility to get me a breath. I've been telling you lies the entire time that I've been in your employment. And that lady listened to everything I said and then said, okay, what we're going to do is we'll refer you to occupational health and we'll get you back to work. I thought, happy days. The first time I've been honest in my life about my alcoholism, and everything's A-okay. The job's okay, everything's okay. That was the Tuesday. I made my amends with her that day, you know, for all of the things that I'd done whilst I was in employment, all of the lies that I told and all of that. She invited me back on the Thursday. I thought to see occupational health. She brought me into the office and terminated my contract of employment. No occupational health appointment appeared. I told her the truth for the first time, the first person in my life that I told that I was an alcoholic. They terminated my contract. Essentially, they threw me out of the office. And it was the best thing that has ever happened to me in my life. Because I walked away from that conversation, not thinking of alcohol. I went straight to a meeting. I interacted with other alcoholics, and I did not know that what that woman had done for me was one of the best things that anybody could have done for me in my life. I took the action. I was willing. I was honest. I was open-minded, irrespective of the outcome. I didn't have employment for another 2 years after that. But the reality of it is, I'd learned the lesson also that God was always going to provide. Remember that guy that took all of the money? I then had no money. None of it mattered. I made my demonstration. It was water over the dam. And in that period of 2 years without any of employment, I sat with sponsees. I brought them through the big book. That's how I learned the big book. That's how I learned about sponsorship. That's how I learned about service. That's why I'm sitting here this morning with you guys. All because this woman threw me out of her office in the most beautiful, compassionate, wonderful way. That's what these amends are about. It's not about me. It's what God needs from me. That lady had the strength and the courage to have that conversation with me. And I met her only last year, randomly, in a coffee shop in Belfast for the first time in 5 years. And I approached her again. She didn't recognize me. I had to tell her who I was. And I thanked her at that point from the bottom of my heart. And I said to her, you saved my life by you terminating my contract. And I actually said the words from the book, throwing me out of your office. You've no idea the trajectory of life that you put me on. And I'm so incredibly grateful. And at that point, I was going on my first international holiday that I'd had since I got sober. I was there on my way to get a flight. You know, life had taken on new meaning because of what you guys had taught me. The amends that I made to her, I never thought that I was going to lose my job. I never thought I'd not have employment for another 2 years. And then when the job that I started 2 years later was way, 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 way lower than the status that I had had before, you know, listen to that egoic talk, way, way lower than the status I had before. But I was placed in the position where God had me be for his benefit, to learn more about this relationship with this power, to learn more about the grace, to learn more about what it is to trust and rely on the power. That's what this amends process is about. It's all water over the dam. We make our demonstration. We take the action. We show up. It's never about the outcome. And what happens through this process as well is that somehow or other, God gives me the humility. God gives me the grace. God gives me the love and the tolerance. God shows me what it is to be useful and how I can be more and more useful as time goes on. I do this for God, to give it to God. And that's the journey that we're on for the rest of our lives. That's what this amends process is about. So if you've any thoughts about the fact that you want to get this relationship back through this amends, you want to get the money back through this amends, that you want to get the big job back through these amends, think again. It might happen to you, it might not, but it doesn't matter what the outcome is, because God's plan is a better one than the one that you have in your finite little mind. And I don't mean that in a dismissive way, but God has all power, infinite power. May you find him now. And I'll leave it at that.